The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's NCEA's webinar, Best Practices for Developing an Effective School Website. My name is Thomas Pigg, and I'm happy to host this webinar for you today. Before we begin, please know that your microphones have been muted. If you have questions during today's presentation, please send them through the question box that appears in your GoToWebinar panel. To ask a question, simply use your mouse to click into the blank box area, type your question using your keyboard, and then click Send. You can post your questions at any time throughout the presentation to be added to the queue. We will answer these questions at the end of the presentation, and the presentation should last about an hour today. Immediately following the webinar, you will be prompted to complete a brief survey about your webinar experience. I thank you in advance for providing us with this valuable feedback. For those of you attending this webinar live, you will receive a copy of the presentation materials and a certificate of attendance within the next day or two. You will also receive an email tomorrow with instructions on accessing the recording. I should also note that there are a few handouts, so if you look on your GoToWebinar panel, you'll see that there are handouts for this particular presentation. Now, before we begin our presentation, I would like to begin as we do all things in prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Holy Father, we thank you for calling us to a ministry to serve and love students. We are grateful that you have chosen us for this task. We pray for wisdom and guidance as we listen to the expertise of our speakers and as we put into practice the things we have learned. Allow us to successfully proclaim your gospel and the good news of our Catholic schools through the various outlets that are available to us. We ask this through the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. At this time, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. First, we have Keisha Briscoe. She is the Marketing Communications Manager at NCEA. And also we have Liz Cherry, who is the Founder, President, and Creative Director at Cherry & Company. At this time, we will begin our presentation.
Hi, thank you, Thomas. It is a pleasure being with you today, this afternoon, presenting on a very important and relevant topic. And I hope that you all will discover or learn something new today. We have a lot to cover, so, we want to get started. But before we begin, I want to take a poll. I want to ask you guys a question. Where do you stand today? Are you in the process of redesigning a website? Are you thinking about it? Do you want to make the case to your principal, president, or pastor? Is it on your wish list? Can you please answer that for me? We have a poll question coming up. The poll is open, so if you can take a few seconds to answer that. A website is so important nowadays, especially for a school. A school's website is a critical component to making a great first impression. And it is often the first contact that, people have with your school. So it should reflect your overall mission. It should reflect your school's brand or image and reputation of your school. So wherever you stand today, Thomas, do we have the results in yet?
Yes, we do. 38% replied that they are in the process of a website redesign. 34% are thinking about a website redesign. 7% want to make a case to the key stakeholders for redesign. And 21% say that redesign is on their wish list.
Awesome, awesome. So, but wherever you stand today, by being here with us, you recognize the value and the power of an effective website. So, you're on the right track. Your school's website is your #1 marketing tool. It is the face, it's the first impression, and it should be unique and tell your school's story. And without diving too deep into your site, your audience should get a good sense of your school's mission and brand. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, I just learned this about a month ago from a corporate partner here, but did you know that before a family reaches out to a specific school about enrollment, they are 57% of the way towards a decision? Wow, that's paramount. Families are well into the decision-making process before even picking up the phone. They have their minds made up before even attending an open house, scheduling a school tour, or requesting more information, etc. And I know you're wondering, how is that possible? Well, as previously mentioned, your website is your #1 marketing communications channel, and it works for you 24/7. And I can guarantee that some schools have lost out on prospective families or students just by having a badly designed or poorly functioning website. That is why a great website is a must-do investment. For prospective families, a good and effective website should be a non-negotiable. So let's dive into our points for today. Best practice #1, fully understanding the website design and redesign process. You know, understanding this process, it will be very beneficial as you navigate, organize, and manage this project. Because a great website, it doesn't happen by luck. It doesn't happen by chance. It doesn't happen by happenstance. Good and effective websites are strategically planned out. And that planning is a process. You know, the website redesign or design is a process, simple as that. And the planning and execution process is divided into phases. And the first phase is the discovery phase. Personally, I think that this phase is the most important in the website redesign project because this phase lays the foundation and it sets the expectations for this project. You know, this is when we are engaging in conversation with stakeholders. We're discovering and understanding the direction, the goals, and objectives for the website. And we will touch more on the discovery phase in just a few because it is a critical step in this process. The next phase is the design phase. This design phase draws from the information gathered from the discovery phase. And a look and feel of your site is created by your design company. Under normal circumstances, your designer will create one or more prototype designs for the new website. And you will work from those prototypes, you know, maybe going through a few revisions for your site, and then a final design is created and is approved. And there are tactics that can be employed to produce a well-designed website. And since your website is the first impression, much attention and detail should be given to the design process. So don't rush it. You know, once we've moved on from the design phase, then we will go into the development phase. And at this point, the website itself is created. Your website designer or your developer will take all of the individual graphic elements from the prototypes and use them to create an actual functional website. And I always tell everyone, our staff here, you know, we have to practice patience because during this phase, some design items may have to be altered based on the technical ability or parameters of the backend or your content management system. A lot of technical jargon or technical talk happens during this phase, and it can be pretty easy to feel overwhelmed or get lost in translation. So during the development phase, please ask as many questions as you need. There are no stupid questions here. And your website designer or developer should be very transparent, accommodating, and they should thoroughly walk you through this process. After website development is done, we will move on to the testing and delivery phase. And during this phase, your website developer will attend to the final details and you will begin to test the new website. You will test things such as the complete functionality of the website along with any web forms. You're testing for last-minute compatibility issues. You're ensuring that your website is optimized and can be viewed in the most recent browsers. You're updating and correcting any errors or technical oversights. So once all the parties involved in the website redesign project, once you're satisfied with the site, you tested everything, then you're ready to sign off, approve, and deliver your site to your school community. So as mentioned previously, the discovery phase is a very crucial, and it's oftentimes an overlooked process. So not only is the overall direction, goals, and objectives for the website is set during this phase, but we're also discovering the business objectives and audiences and personas, and we're researching the competition, and we're finding out what is and what isn't working with the website, because the number one goal is to drive success, and that requires a well thought out strategy and clear understanding of your school's overall goals and objectives, because your website is just a tool, okay? It's a tool to support the big picture. It's a tool to support the overall big global goals that are already set for your school community. And I personally believe that this should be called the understanding phase, because that is what we're doing during the discovery phase. We're understanding what we want the website to be, who we want it to serve, how we want it to behave, what we want it to accomplish, how are we getting the website to accomplish it, and what do we want the website to look like. And you must create an overall purpose of your site. And please know that the website is not for you. Okay, it's for your audience. And this is a critical mistake that a lot of folks make. You know, they create a website based upon what they think it should be, based upon what makes sense to them. And you know, that's a huge mistake, and it's a huge missed opportunity. Understanding your audience will save a lot of time and effort, because then you know what they want and what they are looking for. One of the first things you should do in the discovery phase is conduct a website user survey. You know, find out the who, what, when, where, and wow. You know, survey your website users, and you know, that can be the families at your school, it could be faculty, it could be staff, it could be students. You know, but you need to find out who is using your site, when they are using your site, why are they coming to your site, what are they looking for, what do they like about the site, what do they not like about the site. This is important data to gather in the discovery phase. Additionally, we want to analyze your website data. Hopefully you have some sort of data analytics platform running on your website. If you don't have that, please do that immediately. And you know what, to even take it a step further, during the discovery phase, you want to gather all of your website household or administrative items. I understand that in schools, because there's, you know, change in leadership or staff, some people may not know who owns the domain name, who is the hosting company, when do we need to renew any of our contracts related to our website, when was the last time we even had a website redesign. All of this information is important to gather in the discovery phase. But touching back on the website analytics, you definitely want to get that embedded into your site. A quick and easy free tool you can install is Google Analytics. But whatever you use, please pull some reports and analyze the data. This will help you make data-informed decisions about the direction of the website. And then you want to have a real and honest conversation with your team or with the stakeholders at your school. Get everyone together. Let's identify the strengths, the weaknesses, the problems, the challenges that we're having with the website, because feedback is important. And as a team, identify what can be done to set your site apart, and how can we all work together as a team to make this website redesign a success. Other activities that go into this phase are research, tons of research. What are the website trends? What other websites do we like? How should we structure our site? What does our navigation look like? We'll touch on the navigation a little bit later. You'll also determine the functional requirements. What are all the things we want our site to do? You know, what do we want our users, how do we want our users to behave on the site? You know, and this could be, we want them to pay tuition, we want them to sign up for after school club, we want them to schedule a tour or RSVP for an open house, or retrieve homework, view our calendar of events, like or follow our social media channels. It could be downloaded interest packets, but this is where you identify the functional requirements. How do we want our site to function? That's the overall question there. Goal setting. As mentioned earlier, taking information from your data, you set your website goals. You know, identify how many users, how many page views you want, how long we want folks to stay on our site. Goal setting happens in the discovery phase. You should also look at your target markets and do a complete target market analysis. And this is important because you want to identify who are your primary and secondary target markets. You know, primary target markets are your main audiences. So who are they? What do they want? What are they coming to your site for? What do you want them to know by coming to your site? What actions you want them to take? You know, keep your primary audience at the forefront when planning and designing your website. Also, we do a competitor analysis in the discovery phase. You know, we look at our competitors and what are they doing? You know, what is working for them? What is not working for them? It's nothing wrong with being inspired by others. Also, another crucial component is a content strategy, because content is key, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but please understand the significance of content. Content drives your website. Okay, if you don't have content, how do you expect users to behave on your site? Well, let me tell you, they won't behave at all. They'll come right in your site and they'll exit in a flash. So you really have to make sure you come up with a content strategy, because content is truly king nowadays. So the discovery phase is a critical component of your website redesign process. It sets the foundation. It informs all of the other phases of the process. So please take your time. Don't rush. Rushing through this phase, you know, you may not give your site all of the support it needs to be successful. And that will be a huge missed opportunity. You know, and remember that it is a process. So try to enjoy it and take advantage of it as much as you can. I'm going to turn it over to Liz now so she can go into our next points.
Thanks, Keisha. I appreciate the opportunity to participate today. We've worked with lots of schools across the country helping them design their websites, and a lot of them have been award-winning. But there is a process to designing, and it's important to design with intention. And the first place you want to start is, once you've got all this great discovery, that's the discovery phase that's been done and all of the research that you've collected, as you go back and think about what all that information says, really what we like to start with is, when you're looking at your current site, what did the data say, what did the survey say as to what areas were working? Because not everything is broken. And if there's something that's working well, then you want to certainly transit that into your new site. What were those areas that were not working so well? Many times what we hear, it's the navigation of the content, or a lot of the content was buried. And then what was missing? Videos and interesting ways to engage your audience, success stories of your graduates or alums, those type of things where people can see and prospective parents can see really what's the value of the education you're providing, what's the outcome. Those are important things that oftentimes get overlooked in a website. So looking through those items to kind of say where we were, where we want to start, and then because you've done a competitive analysis, where did your site fall into the range of your competitors? Did it stand out? Was it woefully lacking? What do you need to do to position your new site to outshine the competition? Because that's really what you want to do. And it's very simple. We recommend you actually do really what we call a before brand board, where you can go ahead and take screenshots of your competitors' home pages and put yours in the midst of it. And when you're, I think 7% of you in the poll were saying that you needed to really make the case for a new website. This is a good starting point because certainly, as Keisha was saying, 75% of the people that are looking through the website are already going to have made a decision. If your site does not stand up to the competition, you've probably already lost out. And that's a very strong, powerful case to make when you're, especially if you're the admissions director or the marketing director and you're trying to get a new site approved. So the first place we're going to start with the design then is to map out your site. And It's important to do this because we need to make sure that those areas that were designated most important to your prospective audience, your prospective parents, you need to provide rapid access to that information. And we like to typically put that in what we call the top tier or the top level of the site. These are the items that you typically appear in a horizontal bar or a menu bar. It's important to spend some time on the sitemap. The items that you put in the main navigation bar, that top tier, or the what we like to, as I said, refer to as the marketing site, that typically is hard-coded for most content management systems. Those are things that if you decide you don't like the order or you want to change, that you would have to pay your programmer to change. So that's something that you really want to make sure you've got sorted through. You want to make sure, too, not to bury information too deep. You don't want your viewers to have to use too many clicks to get to the information. And you have to remember, too, that if you've got a lot of content and you've got one of these really long scrolling pages, you can always cross-reference the info in the content of each page through hot links, so you can jump to other pages. I think it's I don't know what the most recent stat was, but as of last year, I think 60% of the parents were accessing your website either on an iPad or smartphone. So when you've got these really long scrolling pages, which we run into a lot, just remember, if you're trying to access the information on a smartphone, it can be very annoying if you're really scrolling too deep. So keep that in mind as well. 2 items that I want you to remember, I want you to put stars by this. Make sure you put your contact info on your home page. I cannot tell you how many times that I see that not being there. As a parent who's decided, yes, we want to call you, and now you have to make them search for how to contact you. So you want to make sure that's right on the footer, really, of the page, and then that way it'll show up on every page. And make sure you put what grades you serve on your home page as well. Again, another thing that oftentimes we find parents having to search for, what grades do you serve? This is just one example of a sitemap. There is no right way to do a sitemap, but just again, because sometimes if you're starting out, it's confusing as to where you start. But I find that a simple org chart works very well to figure out content. And where you want to start is you want to map out first your current site, all of the pages, every single page, and make sure you can put dotted lines with things that cross-reference or things that have hot links to other pages. And then go ahead on your current sitemap as you're sorting through the content that you're getting rid of and that content that you want to keep. You literally can highlight those boxes in different colors. And then you have to make sure that in your new map, those pages are accounted for. Again, when you're looking at this top-level navigation, that most likely will be hard-coded and will not go away. There are things called a utility menu on every site. Those are usually small words that you see hovering above the bar, or they might be in buttons. Oftentimes they might access a parent's site or a parent portal or an alumni portal. So you want to go ahead and map those as well and what's underneath that. And I find this format very helpful too, because as you're in the build-out stage and you're trying to assign your team roles as to who's getting the content, you can literally color code this. This is actually a map from a site I'm going to show you in a minute. And because there was a lot of content, we were helping the school implement the site and build out the site. We literally were assigning what was done, what wasn't, and it was a very effective, easy way to keep everybody on task. So as we talk about design, if certainly, as Keisha mentioned in her notes, content is king, then design is queen. It is really critical because it speaks to the quality of your school experience. I'm going to show you an example here in a minute, but I want you to really take an objective, hard look at your current site. Does it showcase, does it make parents who go to that feel like, wow, this is going to be a great school? Does it give them a sense of your campus and what it might feel like? They have to imagine their child on your campus, and the website has to and must do that. Does it have a lot of typos in it? Is it well written? So again, if it's not, that's what they're going to assume they're going to get from your school. And it should mirror your brand. Again, many times we see nice websites, but they have nothing in common with the rest of the visual brand of the school. So it really is important that that website feel like the rest of your materials. You do not want to disconnect when your parents look on the website and say they get the admissions packet or show up and meet with your admissions counselor and the materials they get that day. It should all just seem like a seamless flow of the same identity. And that brings me to a very good point, because usually when schools are getting ready to redesign their website, it's a really good time to ask the question, is your brand up to date? If it's not, now is the time to fix it. And a website is a great place to do what I like to call backwards branding. And yes, I mean that with some humor involved. Updating your brand can be a difficult process and a difficult one to be okayed by leadership. But oftentimes, if you let the website lead the way, you think about those brand elements when you're designing the website, then it can be the jumping off point to update the rest of your visual materials. The other thing with good design is that it communicates effectively. It is really important for your prospective parents to understand who you are, to get why they should check your school out rather than that of the competition, and to understand why your school might be a better fit for their child. And if the design is done right, it will help communicate right along with the content those key brand messages that you need to convey. So I wanted to go ahead and show you an example of what I mean about conveying the quality of your school's experience. We worked with a school out in Pennsylvania who was really, had a stellar program. They had been in existence for 40 years, had an incredible alumni report card with the alums saying, wow, what a great experience we had. They've really helped me be a better person and student. So great report card, really good academic program. Other, outside their own community, other schools saw them as the Harvard of LD schools, because this was a school for children with learning differences. But this image on the left was literally their website. Luckily, they really understood that they needed to update their brand, but this is oftentimes what we see, or some version of this. And the content actually inside the website was pretty good, but it was written from a very academic viewpoint. And it tended to be long and verbose, and although correct, it was too much for a marketing site. Because what this has to do is quickly convey to your audience who you are. The other thing is we had very unhappy little boys and little girls, which were not the case at all when you go to the school. They had lots of smiling faces. So as you're looking as a prospective parent at this site, it really doesn't make you want to go there. The other thing is their campus is in this beautiful wooded area, and so there's a lot of outdoor space that the kids use for science classrooms and things. And what you see here is you see a child that looks very unengaged and very bored. When we went to the new site, what we wanted to do is convey the colors and the excitement of the benchmark experience. We wanted to make sure that we had the alum stories on here, so we have a student success section where we have alumni success stories. We wanted just a few calendar of events so they could go and link to it, and we wanted to go ahead and use photography where children were smiling and put their key brand messages also on their website. So the overall process, this actually ended up winning a gold award nationally for websites, and most importantly, what it did to the community is it conveyed a much more vibrant experience. And through this rebranding process and a lot through their new website, their inquiries went up 20%. So a website will do a lot for your school, and it can also do a lot to harm your school if it's not right. So when you're thinking about the design process, you've looked at how your current site sizes up, you've looked at the competition, and then you have to think about what you like. The best way to do this is literally start going on to school sites that you think are terrific and start compiling snapshots and URLs and making notes of what you like and what you don't like. They don't necessarily have to be school sites, but of course as you're looking at school sites they're going to reflect more of those same areas that you need to talk about and convey. You know, what are the types of videos that you liked? What did you like the big picture areas, the smaller banner areas? What is appropriate for your school? And it's just as important to note what you don't like and why. That type of information is going to be critical for your design team, especially if you're using an outside design team, for them to understand and get a gauge on your particular tastes and direction. The next thing that you're going to have to make a decision on are content management systems. And this can be a confusing sometimes thing to navigate through, but it's really not that difficult. There are a lot of options out there, but there are school-centric CMS systems, and that's really where you should start. I've just listed just a few of those, and I've listed them in order of cost. Blackbaud has merged with Whipple Hill, which many of you may have heard of before. They've been around a long time. Whipple Hill had a really good website product. They and Final Site kind of reimagined school website design a number of years ago. But Blackbaud merged with Whipple Hill. Their product is now called OnMessage. They are probably the most expensive option out there. Then you have Final Site, which is a quality CMS system. Magic Hour Communications, which is also a benchmark site that you just saw was built out on Magic Hour Communications. They're a mid-range cost, but very high quality. So we've built out on their site as well. School Site is associated with RenWeb admissions SMS system, and they're a very affordable solution, and they also have some template options. And some of our Catholic school clients have gone with them just because it's an affordable solution and they still end up getting a professional looking website. The other route that some people choose to do is with a custom programmer. I'm going to just give you some from our perspective, because we've built out hundreds of sites and worked with clients in consulting manner on hundreds of sites. A custom programmer, what you have to watch is that it's more than one person. If you have a one-person shop, the reality of it is if something happens to that person, your website is literally out of your control. If it's a small company, just make sure that they have a good longevity and you have a contingency plan if that business should go out of business. With your larger companies, that happening is much less likely. There's another option which I haven't mentioned because I don't want you to consider it, but it's one that many schools choose to do, and that is having a site that's been designed and programmed and possibly even hosted by one of your parents at your school. We've run into this a lot, and it almost always causes issues. The two biggest ones being is that your parent somehow falls out of love with your school, and now once again your site's being held hostage. The other situation that comes up is, say you've decided that your site isn't up to snuff, or that your board, your school board or your school leadership has decided that they want to make changes to the site or they don't like the particular design of the site. Now you have to go tell that parent that you do not like the site, and that's usually never a good conversation. We're actually in that conversation right now. So we would highly recommend that you do not use a parent to design your site, and if you have, I would say that you need to think about that from a sustainability, that is something that you need to change in the near future. I'd like to pose a poll question at this time, and I'd like to find out from our audience how many of you like your current content management system, often called a CMS system. Is it easy for you to change content, update photography, and keep your site current? So as we go through and think about that, I'm going to go ahead and continue on. So in design today, in website design today, you have to think mobile first. Responsive platform is the new platform. Well, I say new, it's been around for about 3 years, but basically it is the Google's recommended design platform. And what we mean by responsive is it allows design elements such as your photo and your main navigation to shrink proportionately from the full width of a large desktop monitor, such as you're viewing now, to an iPad display. And then from an iPad display, if it goes on devices more like a smartphone, those items continually shrink, and in items that would be rendered too small to read, it repositions and switches from scaling to literally changing the position on the site. I'm going to show you a couple examples of that. Holy Trinity site. This is their desktop, and it's a site that doesn't have a deep scroll, because that's another thing that you're going to see vary a lot on the new responsive platforms. Overall, some of the design will be limited by the content management system you choose. So that is why that content management system choice needs to come before any real design decisions are made. But if you just pull the corner of your site down, you can see how these sites work on, say, an iPad size and go down to a smartphone. This is something, as you're looking through your likes and dislikes, it's good to look at. In this particular case, they kept the banner up, and you can still scroll through the banner. They had just a few events showing up on their home page, which also translates well. And then one of the other decisions you're going to have to make is how, if you have kind of quick link buttons on the site, how that translates. Sometimes when it goes small, they don't fill, and other times you can get the CMS provider to fill that button to respond literally to the size of the phone it's being viewed on. So good things to kind of think through. Another example is a site. This site scrolls a little bit more. So in this particular site, it fills your desktop. You have a few items that floats over the screen. It does scroll, but it doesn't scroll too deeply. You've got one area again with what I call button links to your key content areas. And again, if you go back to what Keisha was talking about in the discovery phase and you think about those key areas you wanted to convey, this school basically has made those stand out. So their auxiliary programs, summer programs, campaign for the arts, and a business directory. These are the things that they deemed most important to their key audience. When this one goes down, you can see that they decided to get rid of the big banner. Okay, it literally just goes down to a small item up here, and the primary is just the button audiences. You don't see the news and navigation, the upcoming events or the news. It's just these button items. That was a decision that their internal team, school team, had to make. So as you're thinking about your design, these are important things that you're going to have to communicate to your design team. Now, Hutchinson, get this a little bit bigger here. They have a deeper scrolling site. So I'm just going to scroll this. They almost have a newsletter section where they give you kind of a snapshot of what's going on inside the classroom. They have the featured news sections. They have upcoming events. And then they have those, what I call those hot buttons. So if you look at this, when you scroll down to smartphone size, it's a pretty long scroll. The other thing with this is a blackboard system. You have to think about your photos that you're choosing and how they're going to be seen as well. So pretty deep scrolling site. This is really, there's no right or wrong way to this. It really comes down to preference and what your internal website team likes or dislikes. So when we come to best practice number 4, it's really about looking at your photography. We want you to be picture perfect, and to do that you really need to invest in great photography. I would say with the Catholic schools that we've been working with, this is the one area that the website team tends not to plan for. I've gone ahead and supplied some photo tips for you all. That's one of the takeaways from this, where we have taken our expertise of 30 years of photography, 20 years specifically for secondary schools, on how to get the most out of your photography session. But the reason why photography is so important is, one, is it really will drive the design of your site. For a parent, choosing a school is an emotional decision. That emotion is driven by photography and by the words that go over those photographs. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen a parent melt when they see a really cute face and they just think, especially with a smile, and they think, oh, my child's going to love it here. It really does sell your school. We believe your homepage and subpage banner photography should be shot professionally, and if you have a video on your homepage, it needs to be high quality. Certainly, photos taken on smartphones today by your faculty, they do have a place within your website. The quality isn't as critical as, say, on a printed piece, but on that subpage, the banner photography and your homepage photography, these are your key images. This is what's going to be selling your school. This is that first impression of your school. They need to be great. Less is more, bigger is better. And another tip, make sure too you get a general photo release on all of your students. Most of the time this is done in your student contract, and most of the schools we've worked with have had that, but make sure that you have one. A couple of the schools we've worked with did not. One of the things that's becoming popular is video on the home page, and I just wanted to show you this, what this looks like. Now, as you'll see, this is taking a little bit of time to load. These are cool. I mean, it really does give a sense of place. If you have a great campus, this is a cool way to feature your school. The one thing you have to keep in mind is it does take longer load times. So again, this is one that you need to go to your website professionals and your programmers. You have to figure out how many images you can handle, and again, you have to make sure that the quality of the video is terrific. But it is an interesting thing that we're seeing more and more of, and certainly something that you may want to consider as a potential option. Some photo don'ts. Make sure that you don't use blurry or out of focus images. Very, very common. This is another one that we see. This is actually a photograph that was on one of our school's websites, and yes, the boys are adorable, and I'm sure everyone is a gem and a doll, but what happens so often is it's hard to be objective when these little darlings are your kids that are running around your school, and you tend to get caught up in the personal feelings. But from an outside perspective, it seems like these are the questions that this photo brings up to a prospective parent. Gee, they don't have a cafeteria. Oh, those poor kids, you know, they don't look happy. They've got the sun in their eyes. They don't have a good outdoor space. There's no grass at that school. This brings up all sorts of thoughts, mostly negative. And also, it only shows little boys. It doesn't show a good range of ages. You have to think about the diversity of your school population. Is that reflected in your photographs? So, and this literally was one of the banner photos in a site that we were working on. You have to think about, too, what's going to be covered up by some of the images, and it just doesn't speak to the quality that we want to see on your sites. A good quality photograph has great expressions. The kids are happy. It tells a story. In this particular place, the two little girls holding hands say friendship. It shows a range of ages. It looks like they're in a very spacious lobby area. It's light-filled. So this one image gives a lot of different instant perceptions to the viewer. And when it's cropped and you focus in on those two smiling girls and you put words with it like a family community, it really does say family. Another good thing when you're looking at photography is to really showcase some of your faculty and teachers. I know this is always kind of a touchy subject because feature one faculty member and not all of them, but it is part of your school experience. And if you're going to be doing that, make sure that everybody looks great and that the faculty member is really engaged with the students. The students are responding to them. In this particular image, you not only get that, you get a lot of happy kids. You see that they have an athletic program, and you also know that they have a gym. So one photograph can say a lot. For your website, once you decide, you've decided on your content management system, you're starting to decide on your design. When you're thinking about photography, I want you to also make sure when you hire that professional photographer, I want you to make sure that they know what format your homepage and subpage banners are going to need. We've seen quite a few examples already today. Some of them are more of a typical almost box configuration or slight rectangle, but a lot of websites use a very long banner, and when you're shooting faces, if the photographer is not aware of that, they cannot get the composition right, and it'll be very difficult to find photographs that work. Before I go on to social, which is another topic unto itself, I wanted to see if we have the poll results back from the CMS.
Yes, we do. 44% said yes, that their current content management system was easy to use or to change the items. 19% said no, and then 36% said somewhat.
Okay. Sometimes those decisions on whether they're easy to use or not, I'm just going to share, we've got a lot of experiences that we've come across. If you're in that percentage that is having problems with your content management system, it may be that you've got someone new that's managing your website that was not in on the original training. If that's the case, what you can often find, because we find some schools that have become very unhappy with their CMS system, and I know it's a good CMS system. And so what's happened is that person kind of got roped into managing the website, because as we all know, we've all got too few people to do big jobs. And they didn't get the original training, and so they're actually using just through what they can figure out on their own. So if that's the case, I would highly recommend that you go back and ask for some additional training on the content management system. You might find that that will up your satisfaction level a little bit. And the other thing I wanted to just mention too is, what does good photography cost? A good photographer should be anywhere from about $1,000 to $1,500 a day. I want you to make sure that when you get the contract that you ask for all rights to the photography. And another tip too is, when many photographers today want to give you a link to their website where their photos are, I also want you to request that you get copies of all of the JPEG images, high quality JPEGs, on a hard drive as well. We've had several situations where 2-3 years down the road, the photographer has gone out of business, their website is down, and now that investment of these photographs, which still could be used, are gone. So and one other aspect too is, a lot of photographers like to use the photographs for their marketing. Just make sure that your model release makes it okay for them to do so. If not, negotiate that in the initial contract. And this is one area where, if you do have a parent that's a great photographer, it is great to use those parents. Just make sure that you reserve the right, and you phrase that in a way that you still can get a professional photographer in there without hurting their feelings. And then that way you've got the best of both worlds. So talking about social media, best practice number 5. Well, you need to be social. It's one of the obviously the biggest areas of connecting with your constituents of your school. One of the first questions I want you to ask, and should have been asked in your survey, is, what platforms are your parents using? One that may show up is Snapchat, because many of the millennials are using that now, and they like it because it's very personal and the information goes away very quickly. But because of that, we really don't recommend it for schools. So if that's one that shows up, I would stay away from that. As we all know, social media is very powerful, but of course it can also be inflammatory. One of the challenges, just like in managing a website, is managing your social media. You really do need a designated person who is public relations savvy to monitor your social media on a daily basis so that if negative things do come up, which they will, they can be handled effectively and doesn't prolong the situation or the issue. So what are those social media platforms that we see a lot? Certainly Facebook is not as popular as it once was because of all the other opportunities and platforms that have moved into their space. But as of 2015, 91% of millennials were using Facebook. You've heard some recent stats that the younger generation doesn't use it. Well, they don't, as their parents have become more visible on Facebook. They don't like to participate with their parents, so a lot of the younger kids have dropped off. But it's still a good place for schools to be. Twitter and Instagram and YouTube are probably the top 4 that we see. One of the challenges is that you don't have a person to really manage it. And if you don't, then choose 1 or 2. If you're using YouTube, your school should have a designated YouTube channel. And that's one that's usually easy to do, and oftentimes you'll find that your faculty are producing student videos that are really fun to share on YouTube and give an idea of the student product. So those are ones that I think we're all familiar with. Instagram was one that came up in a lot of popularity and really quickly rose to one that the schools were using. Interestingly enough, last year they changed how it sorts data and what gets put up first and not, and it did start impacting some of the schools. I'm not going to go to the blog now, but there is a link that I've put on the presentation. Finalsite has a good blog that they did as far as what this all means to you. Also they had some great ideas on how to maximize this platform and kind of get around what they've done. So I would encourage, if you are using Instagram, that you check that out. Pinterest is one also that can kind of be fun. I wanted to show you this. Not a lot of schools are using it as much as the others, but it is pretty cool. Foxcroft School, I think, does a great job at this. They have a lot of, they've got about 430 people following this. This is a boarding school. I think they're in Virginia. And they've broken it up into a lot of fun different things. They're an equestrian school. And they've broken it out into different areas of topics, and it makes a very fun visual picture of the school and also gives a chance to be a little bit inspirational. So I think it's another way that you can distinguish your school and have fun with it. Again, you'd have to have somebody managing this, and it takes a bit of time to put together, but it is kind of a fun thing to do, and certainly schools lend themselves to picture opportunities to do this. So just some of the things to consider in designing your website. It is an important process, and as Keisha said, take your time, and the design process from start to finish for most CMS providers are anywhere from 3 to 5 months, 5 months being the most normal. And keep in mind that for most content management systems, they typically give you, once the design is done, they give you a home page and your top level built out, and then the school's responsible for building out the rest of the content. And so when you're looking at your time frame and your design partner and content management partner is telling you that it's 5 months, make sure that you understand if you have additional time behind that to build out your site. On the few that I mentioned on the content management system, like Magic Hour and Blackbaud, their contract includes for them to build out 50 pages, and then the rest is yours. But for School Site and Finalsite, at last I checked, which was just a couple months ago, it is the school's responsibility to build out the content. So something to keep in mind. But I really want to turn it back to Keisha, because we want to have time to really talk about, and we're rapidly running out, to talk about content.
Sorry, yes, I was muted there for a minute. Thank you, Liz. Sorry about that. Yes, content content, okay? You've heard us say this a couple of times during the presentation, but content is king, and telling your school story is what will set your site apart, okay? Telling your school story is the heart and soul of your communication efforts. So it must be authentic, it must be based in what's really happening at the school and in your school community, and it should convey your school's personality, highlight your school brand. As Liz mentioned earlier, pictures evoke emotion, but content also can evoke emotion, and it keeps your users engaged. So establishing a content strategy is our best practice number 6, and it's crucial to having a really successful website. Again, your story sets your school apart. It's what makes you unique. Your story or stories should be told in a true, engaging, and creative fashion as well. Liz, did you want to speak more to content strategy?
Just in mentioning that this is where you want to make sure that you understand what brand messages you want to get apart. And again, this is just like social media is. It's really a whole nother topic of conversation. But I'm just going to pop in with your brand messaging really should be 4 to 6 unique, what we call brand distinctives, which together describe your school experience. Oftentimes it's hard to get those brand buckets defined. It may be faculty, it may be experiential learning, it may be your global education program, but what are those 5 areas, or I say 5, 4 to 6 key points, and make sure that those are reflected in that top tier and that top level of your site.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And a pretty site is just that. It's just a pretty site. But content drives the engagement. A great website has compelling content because this is what keeps visitors coming back. Think about your favorite sites that you go to every day or you frequent often. It's the content that keeps you coming back, correct? It's not the pretty site. It's not the images. It's the content and what information that you are receiving from that site. So determine what content you can generate that will be interesting and appealing to your, I'm going to say, your primary and secondary audiences, which could be your current and prospective parents, but also as well as your community at large. And also be sure to include keywords in your content, especially in your titles and your subtitles, because this helps with search engine optimization. We're not going to go too much into search engine optimization because that can be a whole other webinar in itself, but just making sure you include those keywords in your content can help with that. And again, creativity is key. A lot of times I realize that when you say the word content, people may not necessarily understand what that means, or they may just think of words on a paper. And certainly articles can be considered content, but you can also use videos, you can use blogs, infographics, ebooks, case studies, testimonials, white papers, e-newsletters, photos. All of these are forms of content, and you can use all of these to tell your school story. I found this list by researching, I Googled good content excuse me, for schools to publish. And I thought these were some good ideas, and they can be customized to your school story or your school's mission or brand. But, you know, you can publish a blog on how do we teach and learn in the 21st century, and you can tailor that to how does your school teach and help students learn in the 21st century. What is the future of education, and how is your school heading in that direction? How does your school use technology to enhance learning? What is the value of enrolling your child in a Catholic school? Or how can a Catholic school education be affordable? All of these are content ideas that can engage your website users. Content maintenance. This is a key component to a good content strategy because timely, fresh, and relevant content is crucial and it's critical. So to help you maintain new content or produce freshly and relevant content on your website, one thing that is helpful is to have a content scheduler. Create a content schedule to include in your content strategy. Dedicate a couple of people within your school to be responsible for either curating the content, creating the content, or updating the content on your website. And new content should be published at least 2 to 3 times a week. I understand, depending on your school community, it may be, as Liz said, one person doing many of the jobs. So if you're only able to update once a week, that's better than nothing. The worst thing is to have a site sit dormant, so you have students or families researching schools and they come to your site and the information on there, it's about 3 to 4 months old. No one has updated the site. That doesn't reflect on the quality of your school or the quality of your programs versus another site where a parent goes to it and it was just updated a couple of days ago. At least now they know, okay, the information on here is updated, it's accurate, it's timely, and it's relevant. So having someone or a couple of staff members responsible for content on the website is very important. Best practice number 7, analyze website data. We touched on this earlier, but I wanted to go into it a bit deeper. Website analytics are the measurement, analysis, and reporting of web engagement data in order to understand and optimize your website. So to simply put, it's data on who visits your site, how they got there, what did they do on your site once they landed there, where did they go afterwards, what platforms they use, what internet browsers they use, what part of the country are they coming from. All of this information you can gain just by analyzing your website data. And it's critical to understand your visitors' behavior because you want to use that data to optimize your website so that you can improve your results because, again, your website is not for you, it's for your users. So you want to get a good handle on how they're behaving in your website. And also by analyzing your website data, it allows you to make informed decisions based on actual data as opposed to ideas or opinions. How many times have you heard people say, I think we should do this, or I think we should have this on our site. And it's just based on opinion. It's based on what people think, but you use your website analytics to make informed decisions based on data. And there are many tools to help with this. The number one tool I'm going to recommend because it's free, it's easy, it's a lot of resources and education opportunities out there is Google Analytics. It's very easy to install onto your site. So if you do not have any web analytics, I highly recommend you get that installed into your site as soon as possible, even in the current state, even if it's not your newly redesigned website. Best practice number 8, reevaluate efforts. Once your website is up, it's okay. You can go and you can reevaluate things that are there. If things aren't working or, sometimes your website, the priorities change based on the season. So if you're in a high enrollment season or high admission season, you want your website to reflect that. Okay, so you can go in and you can change things and you can adjust to what is and what is not working. That's the great thing about a CMS system. You can easily update and change things. So redirection is good. You use your website data. Okay, we find that we're spending 2 or 3 hours a week producing this piece of content and no one is looking at it from analyzing your data. And then you see, okay, let's maybe try to repurpose this content or let's try to figure out a new way that we can produce this content so that it's worthwhile. Okay, so always evaluate your data and make changes. Redirection is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And lastly, have fun. Just have fun with this process. Have fun with your website. Be open to trying new ideas. Stay updated on website trends. I'm pretty sure websites look different than what they did even a couple of years ago, even a year ago. As Liz mentioned earlier, the big video trend is gaining popularity now. So you just want to stay updated on your website trends. And in fact, best practice is every 2 to 3 years you need to update your website. Look at what others are doing. Be inspired. And when I say others, I don't mean just your competition. Look at the big brands. Look at how their website is organized and what photos they have on their website, how the information is laid out. Be inspired by others. Keep a love it file, as I call it. This is what I have, and it's like my inspiration database. So any website that I like, any picture or any graphic that visually appeals to me, I keep it in a file. And we want to change the if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it attitude. You know, you want to always try to move forward and progress, and you don't want to get stagnant, stuck on the way things are just because it isn't broken. Technology and websites, they're changing, and it changes at a rapid pace. And if you want to stay relevant, and if you want to keep up with the competition to make sure that you're not falling behind, sometimes you got to change things. You got to try new things and take risks, and that's okay. Again, as Liz mentioned, as I just mentioned previously, with the CMS system, it's easy to update things, easy to take away things. So don't be afraid to try new things, because by doing that, you're constantly improving. So just to recap, our best practice is, number one, understand the website redesign process, especially the design phase. You want to design with intention. You want to think mobile first. You want to be picture perfect by investing in photography. You want to get social. You want to establish a content strategy, analyze your website data, reevaluate your efforts, and have fun. So that's it for us today. Thomas, were there any questions?
Yes, I have a few questions here. The first is, what ratio of fun, sales, and borrowed content do you recommend?
Repeat that one more time,
I'm sorry,
Thomas.
this is in regards to content. It says, what ratio of fun, sales, and borrowed content do you recommend?
Liz, do you want me to answer that, or did you want to go ahead and?
I would just say on it's hard to say a ratio, but it would be on your home page. You have to think about, especially with responsive design, you have to think about your real estate of that area. Fun should be really conveyed. More and more, the trend is that you want to allow a child to learn, but learn by engaging. So fun really should kind of come through your pictures. However, in a school where there is some cost to attend for the parent, you want to make sure that the parent feels like they're getting their investment. So fun and lighthearted is good woven throughout, but just having something that is just silly or goofy, I would say a very small percentage. And think too in terms of different areas of your site. So that first top tier, all right, that should be sales, that should be marketing. And that can have fun woven into it, but fun when I mean engaging. It should have video. It should be done in different ways, but that top tier, think of that as your key sales area. That's your admissions speech and your admissions tour. No different. So what your admissions person is saying really should be reflected in that top tier of your site. So that should be heavily sales. And then as it gets more into the rest, you can get more into the meat of the academic experience. And you can get into, as far as when it's borrowed content, you can talk about the things that pertain to your school. Why is a Catholic education important? Those type of things could be on an FAQ piece. But really, content is king. Good content is king. And you don't necessarily need a super deep site. You're trying to convey information that has value to your parent population. So I don't want you to put in fluff just for the sake of filling out pages.
And I would add, once you go through the discovery phase and you determine your audiences, you determine your purpose, as you're going through your content strategy, the percentage or the amount of fun in sales, all of that should be identified within that process. If you are in a high enrollment phase, then you want to have more, I hate to use the word sales, but you want to make sure you have some content on your site that it's more convincing, you know, that makes the parent, like let's say, get their information that they need. And then the photos are a great way to show the fun side of the school. And also think about how you're writing your content. You can provide good information, but you can write it in such a way where it's fun or engaging, but it's still very informational.
All right, and I wanted to remind our attendees that if there were any questions, that you can answer the question, you can ask the question, excuse me, through the question box. It's on your GoToWebinar panel, and it will pop up on my screen, and I will ask it to our presenters. So I do have another question here, and Keisha, I think that you would be able to answer this one. It says, how do you determine your target audience?
Yes, okay, that's a great question. When determining a primary target market, just understand that your entire market is the total number of potential buyers, or I'm going to say prospective families for your school, okay? And then amongst that broad group, your primary target market includes those most likely to buy your service or most likely to enroll in your school. And then your secondary market is the next greatest potential to, your secondary target market has the next greatest potential to buy your service or enroll in your school, either now or in the near future. Or your secondary target market, they may have the power to influence, so they could influence others to either enroll in your school or not. So most of your revenue from your school will come from your primary target market, okay? And your secondary target market includes future primary families, or I'm sorry, future prospective families, or those who can influence others.
And can I pop in here too, Keisha?
Sure, absolutely.
The other purpose your website serves is for your current families. So as Keisha was saying, she's talking about your primary target audience, which is your prospective, who's going to come into your school, because that's the primary role your website should be providing for you. But it does have this role too as for your current audiences, and it helps in retention. What we have found is the better job you do selling to your prospective families, the better job you do in reselling to your families every year when it comes to re-enrollment, that this is still a good investment to make, and it's an important investment to make. And why it's an important investment? So those things will do double duty, but there are other avenues that your current parents need to use, and that's usually when they use a parent portal or something. And it's important too to realize with your website that you want to keep confidential information or a lot of information for your current parents off of your outside site. So most content management systems have some kind of parent portal or internal site that parents can go to. And that's really, it is one of your audiences, but it's your, not your primary. And then as Keisha mentioned, in that primary audience, your community influencers, those people that can talk your school up, they all really sit under that primary target audience. And the easiest way to figure out the demographics of what your target audience should be is to look at the makeup of your current parents. For those parents, if you ever do a study of your current parent population, it will give you your demographic range of those parents who are a good fit for your school.
All right, I know we're a few minutes past the hour, but we have one last question here, and Liz, I think this one might be for you. I'm wondering if you could give us a few pointers on what we could look for in a website designer.
Yes, a lot of the content management systems now, it's changed a little bit over just really in the last year and a half. We used to do a lot of the design and then partner with a content management system person, and it worked well because then the brand was contained. So our firm or a firm like ours would be one that would design a website. And in that particular case, what you wanted to look for is you wanted to look for somebody who understood web design but also understood school brand. Very, very, very important. Now it's changed a little bit. Most of your content management systems that you're going to be on, they will design it for you. So what you're looking for then is you're looking for your internal team, or perhaps if you're working with a local graphic designer or a firm such as us, what we'd be doing is just providing kind of consultancy to make sure it's echoing the brand, or give those elements to the designers so that they have kind of some guidelines to follow, and we're working with several schools to do just that right now. If you're working with a custom programmer locally that's going to be designing and programming your website, which again is not the best way I'd recommend it, but again, sometimes it's the only way you can go with budgets, then what you'd want is somebody that can show you a lot of examples that you love, that the sites are easy to load, and if they've got a good portfolio, then that's something that starts, and they really need an understanding of how to market a school. And that's where a lot of times your local custom programmers fall apart. So that is really why I kind of push you in the direction of going with a school-centric CMS solution. And there are a lot more than those I listed. And a number of them, if you've really got a low budget, have template solutions that are really good. And so I would just recommend you really look strongly at those. I think it'll save you a lot of headaches in the long run.
All right, there are no more questions in the queue. So at this time, we will conclude today's webinar. Before that, I would like to invite everyone on this presentation to go ahead and visit our website at ncea.org to see listings for upcoming webinars, professional developments, as well as to explore our growing resource library. I want to thank all of you for spending your time with us today, and a special thank you to Liz and Keisha for all that you have shared with us. We appreciate all of the advice. As a reminder to everyone, we will be sending you this recorded webinar and presentation materials via email within the next day or two. Thank you again, and may you have a blessed evening and afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas.